I met Nick Bear for the first time in person in Austin at an ambassador weekend. I just kind of had this feeling. I was like, you know what? Nick seems like the type of guy that probably sucks at posing. Yeah.
Okay. What's the give? Is somebody who's just like a little stiffer, or like what exactly is the
He's a
give there?
little stiff,
Yeah.
He's a country boy. The type of guy that, yeah, he's going to knock out a bunch of push-ups and pull-ups and some mileage and stuff, but is he going to practice posing for 30 minutes a day? Probably not. And so I met him. I was like, hey, man, I don't know how your posing is going, but I'm a really good posing coach and I'd love to help you out. So how is that going? And he's like, not good, man. Not good. He's like, I will take you up on that offer. Here's my number. I'm like, all right.
Welcome, visionaries, dreamers, and trailblazers to the Casually Ambitious podcast. I'm your host, Chase Price, and I am thrilled to embark on this journey with you. Here, we dive deep into the realms of wellness, entrepreneurship, and mindset. Let's build a life we love while loving the life we live. The adventure to a more mindful, purposeful, and casually ambitious life starts now. What's up, homie? You got a little studio of yourself over there, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. We're trying to keep up with everyone else, right?
I had the studio set up going for a little bit. Now I'm back in a bedroom in the house, but you know how it goes. Ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I mean, hey, mine's just a glorified bedroom at this point, so it's whatever.
Nice, brother. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I just did a little 3-mile trail run, so I'm feeling pretty alert. Woke up at 4 a.m. to escape the Arizona heat, and got an energy drink. So life is pretty good right now.
Nice, a little First Form. Is that Tropic Thunder? What is that one?
It is. Oh wait, are you a First Form guy?
Yeah, bro. Come on.
Oh yeah, okay.
You already know.
Oh, you're wearing it. Yeah, okay. I thought so, but that's actually a coincidence. I did not do that on purpose. But a plug, I guess, for you. Yeah, the Tropic Lightning. This one's so good, actually.
So good. So you're in Arizona. You live in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, man. How long you been out there for?
Ooh, 3.5 years now.
Well, cool, man. I'm so excited to have you on. It's been a long time coming. I've been, trying to make this happen for a while. So I'm glad you took some time and we're making it happen right in the middle of, you got a lot going on, which I'm excited to dive into. First and foremost, I think we actually have a mutual connection. I think you've coached somebody here in Charlotte that I'm homies with, Phil Reed, in the past. Is that right?
I'd say we're more just buddies.
Okay.
I didn't really coach him much or anything like that, but he randomly lived in Omaha, Nebraska, where I grew up and lived, and we just randomly hit a workout, and just super cool guy. And I mean,
nice.
For how he is, but super cool guy. And all of us like-minded individuals end up finding each other eventually. So
always, bro, always.
That's how it goes.
And I love that you kind of set the precedent this morning with your trail run. You got 3 miles in. You're notoriously a bodybuilder. And we'll jump into that's maybe not true, because in the beginning, I know you started as a runner and then you kind of transitioned into bodybuilding, and now you're this hybrid mountain athlete morph thing going on that's so incredible. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about your humble beginnings, so to speak. You were a runner in high school, right? Is that kind of where your athletic career kind of started?
Yeah, so track was my thing. I mean, usually people don't start track until, I believe, 7th grade, when it's introduced into the schools. At least that's where I grew up. Track started at 7th grade. I actually started in 2nd grade, I believe, through the USATF summer track program. No one really knew what it was or anything like that at my school, but I was just known as the track athlete, and I was obsessed with track. That was my whole identity. Eventually, I did football and all that stuff too, but even growing up, on the football team in 8th grade, I was the second smallest on the team. I wasn't that big or anything like that. I always kind of had a sprinter build. And, eventually I fell in love with weights, and eventually that led to, finding, I don't know, the next extreme step. And I kind of just fell into bodybuilding eventually, but it started with track, man. Yeah. Track and field.
What did that look like for you? Did you have a successful track career in high school? Were you looking to potentially pursue that into college? What did that look like back then?
Yeah. So early on, I would say, more ages 11, 12, 13, 14. I was on that path pretty much. I guess you could say. I actually competed at the National Junior Olympics in the 4x4. I was pretty fast. I was pretty good at what I did. And eventually, I mean, you could blame a lot of reasons: genetics. I'm too white. I'm too short. You know, 5'10" being like I don't know, like skinny white kid. I just at some point I kind of plateaued, and I was trying to balance that in football. Football was telling me, oh, I had to bulk up, I had to get bigger, I had to catch up with the size of these other guys if I wanted to be a successful running back and corner. And then track was telling me I needed to be a little slimmer, a little skinnier, so I could keep up. There's one other kid in my high school in my grade who was faster than me, and we were the same height, but I weighed 35 pounds more than him. And that's when I started to kind of plateau my skill level, and so at that point I was like, okay, I'm not going anywhere in track. I'm definitely not going to win a gold medal in the Olympics in the 100-meter dash anytime soon. When you got 6'6" Usain Bolts out there. So at that point, I think I just fell in love with the gym because, hey, the gym's always loyal to you, and it's always there. So yeah.
Always loyal. That's for sure. And so this is in Nebraska. You were growing up and went to high school and everything in Nebraska?
Yep, Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
hmm
Okay, cool. And so in Omaha, Nebraska, I assume probably football was probably king as well. So that probably prompted you to go that direction. Am I right?
Yeah, we had the best program in the state, the most winning program in the state. We won state twice while I was in high school. So football is a big deal, and the weight room was a big deal. They actually recruit us in 8th grade. The coaches come to the middle school and are like, "Hey, if you want to play football this summer, the day after school ends, you will be at the high school in the weight room lifting weights." Like, yes, sir. And there we
Yep.
were. Yeah.
Love it. So around what time was this when you were in high school? Like what year was that when you were in high school or freshman year?
Oh man, 2009,
Okay. I'm just curious if we're
2010,
on the same, like I'm 30. So how old are you? 31, 31?
29.
Oh,
Yeah,
29. Okay.
I turned 30 in October, so
Okay,
big
perfect,
year.
bro. Yeah. Nice. So we're probably on a very similar trajectory of like, I remember being in high school and somebody introduced me to the weight room and then somebody introduced me to Jacked 3D, which at the time was
Oh,
like
oh
this
yeah.
amazing pre-workout that is now banned and hasn't been around for a while. But it was that like bro era where you kind of discover what the weight room is. You just you're on the football team and you're kind of figuring out what your identity is at that point. And for you it sounds like you were transitioning a bit from this track star to more, the corn-fed big boy football player, right? Did that come
That's a good way to
naturally
put
to
it.
you, like right off the bat? Were you like, oh shit, this weight thing and like this, macho bro lift football thing was kind of for me, or did that take some time for you to flesh out and figure out, okay, I'm actually pretty good at this?
It's so funny because back then social media did it wasn't the same. I mean, not at all. And so nowadays we because ideas share so quickly on social media, and we have all these heroes and inspirations and influencers that we look up to now who almost show us what's possible and give a face to what we're trying to do and become. Back then that didn't exist, so I just had no idea what I was doing or who I was or what I was trying to be. All I knew is that the second I touched the weights in the gym, and the second I started to learn what, pushing yourself was and finding new limits and trying to be the hardest worker in the room, I started like, all I knew, I didn't know anything about who any of these people were in the world and what could happen if you do work really hard. All I knew is I just really liked it and it felt
Mm-hmm.
real good. And so, I'd go to track practice, we'd work hard, we'd, sprint till we're almost puking, and then dust off the shoulders and go straight to the weight room and start lifting weights. And then, we'd lift, getting ready for football season. Football season would hit, and then football season would come and go, and then we're back in the gym hitting the weights again. And it just something about pushing yourself, man. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know other people were like that. I didn't know that was a thing to be obsessed with, but I just was. So now it makes sense now because now we're all like-minded individuals. Like we said, we've all found each other now, and we're like, oh, okay, so I'm not crazy. There's actually a lot of us out there
Right.
that have learned this same lesson, gone down the same path. But back then, man, you're just kind of figuring things out. You didn't really know what was going on.
So when did you start to take the weightlifting a little bit more seriously and think, okay, maybe I do want to look into whether it's strength competitions or maybe it is actual bodybuilding competitions and take that more seriously?
Yeah, so I remember when I was around 20-ish. So I don't know, 2015, 2016, something like that. Um, that's when I learned what powerlifting was. And it just spoke to me. It's like lift as much weight as you possibly can. I mean, it felt like the 100-meter dash. It's like
Mm-hmm.
run as fast as possible for 100 meters. It's like lift as much as you can. I'm like, hey, I can get on board with that. The issue with powerlifting for me is I just kept getting hurt, and I,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't blame powerlifting. At the end of the day, I blame programming and lack of knowledge and all these other things. But I did have a lower back injury from track actually, and I couldn't keep up with squat and deadlift. I wasn't progressing very fast, and I was just a really mediocre power lifter for a good 5 years, I'd say. My bench press was pretty much the only thing that was half decent. And that's because it didn't affect my lower back.
Mm-hmm.
But along that path, you start to rub shoulders with some other extreme people, and you start to meet some bodybuilders. And bodybuilding, I'll say, is nothing I ever thought I would do. I went to my first bodybuilding show just to spectate and watch in maybe 2016-ish, around 2016, 2017. Me and my wife, I think she was just my girlfriend at the time, we went just to see if it would be something we'd be interested in. We sat there through the show and we're like, this is so weird. We were never doing this. And that was my first experience with bodybuilding, is deciding that I was never going to do it. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny how the tables they always turn, man. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same thing with most athletes probably. I mean, I remember being the runner that was like, yeah, I don't need to run a marathon. I'm good with a half marathon, and now we're out here running hundreds. And I think you're similar, is like you get on, you catch a bug and you get on a path, and then you're like, okay, I want to pursue this to the best of my physical ability and see where I can actually take this, see what this can turn into. So for you, you start to kind of during this time transition, you're lifting heavy weight, you're trying to do, some of this strength stuff, not really seeing bodybuilding in the picture. What does your career look like at this time in your early 20s going through this?
Yeah, so I definitely knew that I wanted to be an online coach. I knew that since forever I was going to be some sort of personal trainer, online coach. And I kind of actually have to thank Christian Guzman for that one, because all I knew at the time, I mean, originally I wanted to go in the FBI. That was like my whole
Mm.
plan. FBI, work with human trafficking or some sort of um, something in that regards with human rights or something like that. That was my whole life plan. And I had a guy in the FBI who was kind of like mentoring me through the process and helping me like build up my resume. He actually was the one that convinced me to study my passion in college. So I was thinking I needed to study like criminology or psychology or something. And he's like, do not do that. He's like,
Mm.
everyone does that. You will not look special on your resume at all. I highly advise you to study your passion instead. And so signed up for exercise physiology as my degree. And from that point, I knew I still wanted to go into the FBI, but I knew I was going to be coaching in some sort of capacity. It just fit my personality too well. But eventually, because of Christian Guzman, actually, I realized like that doesn't have to be just kind of like a side gig or like a little hobby. Like that can actually just be your career, and it can be your career without getting shot at, having to like do crazy missions and put my life at risk and have to be behind a desk for 50 hours a week doing paperwork, like what you actually do in the FBI. And so, yeah, I realized early on, like, okay, wow, I can actually like do this thing. Like I can do my passion as my career, help people get stronger. I wanted to help specifically in strength training because that's what I was doing at the time. And so I was doing that at the same time while trying to develop into a better athlete at the same time while in college. It was a fun time, man. It was a really fun time.
So you start taking some clients on in college, I'm assuming at the time,
Mhm.
working part-time, starting to build your book, trying to figure out, okay, how do I turn this little side thing into like an actual business and do this full time? Um,
Mhm.
After your graduation and into, talk to me about those early days after you did graduate. Did you go and work in, some of these other boutique gyms? Like, what did that look like? Was there personal training involved, or was it always from the jump kind of like this online coaching thing that you'd seen folks like Christian doing and other YouTubers and people with influence saying like, this is a possibility, this can be a full-time thing?
Yeah, I mean, I got to shout out the wife on this one because we got married in college. We were both quite young. I was 23. She was 20 when we got married. We were really young. And she just believed in me and trusted me so much. So the plan after graduation was for me to go full time into my business, which was not sustainable at the time. Like it did not sustain us whatsoever. But I was going to chase that down and make it happen. So at the time, I did pick up a private personal training job, which was really great because the pay is way better than if you're going to go work at, I don't know, Anytime Fitness or whatever.
Right.
So that was cool. And I could pretty much just pick my schedule and how many people I wanted to work with. So I kind of made a commitment to myself. I was never under any circumstance going to work more than 10 hours a week, just training. And that was going to give me, I don't know, $1,000 a month just to help contribute to the pot a little bit. And then actually my wife was going to go and work full time, which is crazy. I still am amazed by her for making that, that sacrifice for us. And that was the plan. We said like, hey, like, let's give it a couple of years and see what happens. And actually after about 4 months, she was able to quit her job and we got an apartment, and she does the same thing as me. So we just went all in. And after 4 months, she quit her job. And then, a little bit later, after COVID kind of settled down a little bit, we moved to Arizona and just on a fly. And we've just been doing this thing ever since.
That's incredible, man. What a ride or die when she was just like, yep, I'm gonna take the brunt of the financial burden right now. And just, I mean, total trust, man. And there's so much to be said for that in a partner. And like, when you're looking for a partner is truly finding like a ride or die. And that was it for you. That's incredible, man. I love to hear that. I'm curious. So after you guys she quits her job, you guys are kind of both doing the online personal training and all this. How long were you doing that before the idea of TUA, which is, your program, Take Uncommon Action, for those of you who aren't familiar? When did it become just kind of like a solo hustle of like one-to-one coaching with you specifically into more of a brand / business of Take Uncommon Action? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So before I actually had a business partner, and it just wasn't that great. He was a really good friend of mine, and there's just a long story, but things weren't the way that I wanted them to be. And I probably should just blame my own confidence level at the time for not having enough confidence in myself for doing things how I wanted them to be done and what I believed in, and based on my own beliefs and philosophies. So I feel like I wasted the first 4 years of my online coaching, career, just like trying to make something work that wasn't fully me and that I didn't have the best partner with. So I finally, everyone was telling me for years to move on and kind of do my own thing. And eventually after 4 years, I did. I made that decision, which is really hard, but needed to be done. So January 2021 is when I launched TUA, Take Uncommon Action. And immediately, I do mean immediately, it became way more successful than anything I had ever been doing before. First month, I was like, holy crap, this was my goal, to start making this much money by the end of the year. And I did it in 1 month.
Fuck yeah.
So, okay, like this is a thing. And that's when we moved to Arizona. Instantly, we're like, let's get out of here. Let's keep this train rolling, So yeah, that was pretty crazy. But I finally feel like with TUA, it is just 110% exactly what I want it to be and intended it to be all along. Love it.
That's incredible. I'm curious, you don't have to divulge too much, but I'm curious, from the transition from the old business model to the new business model, what were some of the core competencies or core values that you felt like you weren't nailing with the old business and the old business partner that you wanted to make sure were at the forefront of TUA?
Yeah, I'd say a few things here. Number one, I think that business partner more like the idea of what we were doing rather than actually what we were doing. I think he liked the idea of becoming a Christian Guzman type figure, but not the process of getting there. I believe I like the process of actually getting there. Like I love coaching, and I don't think he loved coaching. I was doing a whole lot of the work and he wasn't really. But to kind of go back to the main points of the question, I guess, I feel like I really dialed in like who I was and my philosophies, and I was finally able to like be myself. I wasn't trying to be two people. with like a vague philosophy backing it up. I was finally just, 100% being myself and in my core belief systems. And I think that showed to people. And I think people realize that. I think people can feel that energy. If someone's being really genuine and true to themselves, and people are attracted to that. So I think that's kind of part of it. On a more like, really like application standpoint, I guess I leaned into and doubled down on just true one-on-one coaching with our last business model. I was more the one that wanted to lean into the one-on-one coaching. My partner was more of the type to like create some sort of course or some sort of digital asset that is infinitely scalable. We can focus on Facebook ads, we can do this whole thing, and it just became this big system that was always imploding on itself. And at the end of the day, never offering as much value as I believe you can with quality one-on-one coaching. And so ever since then, that is all I've ever done. It's just one-on-one coaching. I don't sell programs. I don't sell digital courses. It's nothing. It is pure organic, one-on-one, true coaching, and I love it.
Yeah, incredible, man. And I love that you kind of called out Christian as your inspiration. And I gotta say, man, like I've been following you maybe year and a half now. You've been a huge inspiration for me to see what it can turn into as far as,
Appreciate
creating
it.
your own organization, creating your own business, your brand around coaching. And I've always known this about you without even being into it and being a part of the program is like it comes down to just one, giving a fuck and like caring, enjoying the coaching process. Like if you care about your clients and you love coaching, the rest is going to take care of itself. Like as long as you have a little bit of business acumen about you, you're going to be successful. But seeing you kind of start to build Tua the last 2 years, man, has been very inspirational to me. And I pull a lot of inspiration from that because, we oftentimes think we need 100,000 followers to build a business on, training clients or whatever online. And that's just not the case. As long as you have, again, these core competencies that you're posting about and people are finding you organically that way, it's going to come. It's going to come, and it happens rather quickly. So shout out to you for, being a huge inspiration for me. And I'm curious about when did one is the Nick Bear effect of what that had on your business for you. How did that partnership come to be? For those of you who don't know, Nick, I guess maybe last year, maybe 2 years now, I don't know, he did a bodybuilding competition,
Sure.
and he was working with nobody for a while, just kind of like, I think, self-educating, and then
Yeah.
realized, hey, this isn't going great. I think I need to bring in an expert, somebody who knows what the fuck they're talking about. And he brought on Brady, and then went on to achieve some incredible things at the actual show. What did that look like? Like, was that just I know that you've always been associated with BPN. You and I were ambassadors. I think that's how we initially got linked up. And I'm not sure your affiliation now, but what did that look like when you got an outreach from Nick Bear? Was that just like a random DM?
Yeah, pretty crazy story, is all just really meant to be 110%. I feel like I had that same mindset for a very, very long time. You can't be successful in this game unless you have the 100K followers and all this stuff. And I finally stopped letting that be a limiting belief, a few years ago. And thank goodness, because, if you're an online coach out there, your life will be changed forever if you can have about 50 clients. I mean, maybe even 30 clients. And to have 30 to 50 clients, you really need only 30 to 50 followers. You don't need 100,000 followers or a million followers. You need 30 to 50. That's it. And if you're very good at what you do and you're focused on them and offering as much value as possible, then it'll happen. But I mean, I've been doing this for years, and I've never felt really like the type that just kind of gets a break, I guess. I just had to fight and grind for every inch of success, and luckily we did build a pretty successful company, and things were going really great. My athletes, bodybuilders, lifestyles, whoever they were seeing awesome results, and life was good. And because I'd done all that groundwork, I felt very ready for whatever was going to be thrown at me. I met Nick Bear for the first time in person in Austin at an ambassador weekend. Maybe you were there. I'm not really sure, to be
No, I
honest, but
wasn't.
it was really crazy because I was not supposed to be. It was a very last second event. They're like, hey, by the way, 2 weeks notice. If you're in Austin, we're having this ambassador
That's
weekend.
exactly why I wasn't there, because it was so last
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah. So I had literally already booked a trip to Austin because I had a business event, I don't know, like 3 days before. I was like, whoa, okay, well, crazy enough, I'm going to be in Austin that weekend already. So I'll go to this event. And I remember talking to Nick, and I just kind of had this feeling. I was like, you know what? Nick seems like the type of guy that probably sucks at posing. And I'm like,
You
I
could just
guarantee
tell.
he's not. Yeah.
Okay. What's the give? Is somebody who's just like a little stiffer, or like what exactly is the
He's a
give there?
little stiff,
Yeah.
He's a country boy, the type of guy that he's gonna knock out a bunch of push-ups and pull-ups and some mileage and stuff. But is he gonna practice posing for 30 minutes a day? Probably not.
Yeah.
And so I just had this thought. I was like, man, I bet his posing really sucks, and he needs to be good at posing. And so I met him. I was like, hey, man, I don't know how your posing is going, but I'm a really good posing coach, and I'd love to help you out. So how is that going? And he's like, not good, man, not good. He's like, I will take you up on that offer. Here's my number. I'm like, all right. And just right away, the posing sessions went really great. And I was asking him about how his plan's going and what I would, do in some situations. And he's like, hey, I think I just need to bring you on full time and coach me through the show. And I was like, let's do it. And hey, went pretty good. He won, so can't complain there.
Yeah.
He looked awesome. He was the most shredded guy at the show. And yeah, that's how that happened.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And what effect did that have? Obviously, you had a thriving business doing really
Mm-hmm.
well at that point, but he has a lot of pull, and a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
follow him, and obviously probably reached out to you saying, "Hey, I just saw what you did with Nick Bear. Can you do that with me?" What did that look like?
Yeah, it was definitely pretty crazy. We had quite the boost right off the bat, and I had only one other coach on the company at that point, so we got hit real hard. We had to say no to a whole lot of people. Mostly, I'll be honest, because not a lot of bodybuilders follow Nick Bear.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who were coming our way was like, hey, I want you to coach me for a marathon, and then I want to do a bodybuilding show right afterwards. And we kind of had to say, hey, to be honest, like that's not really our specialty, but
Yeah,
we can get you shredded for stage. So there were a lot of hybrid people coming our way, and all in all, though, it was a great experience, and got to meet a lot of new people, and obviously the business did grow. We still get some residual from that long term, people who still find us through Nick Bear, which is pretty crazy how that works.
that's awesome. Very cool, man. I'm curious. So you just competed a bodybuilding competition, I guess last month.
Yep.
I know there was a little bit of like drama too, not on your part, but just, with the judges and with everything that happened. I don't need you to go super in depth, but could you kind of summarize what exactly, because there was like the competition before the competition, and then there's, so for somebody like me who's green to bodybuilding, can you kind of walk back through what that process looked like? One, talk about, the build up, how you were feeling. I believe you felt the best you've ever felt. You looked the best you've ever looked prior to that event. How did that all unfold?
Yeah, so it was a pretty big show here in the Phoenix area. Anytime you're going to what we would call like a national qualifier, it's going to be a good show, especially if you're in a big city. So, and it was a good promoter too. So pretty good show. And I needed to get nationally qualified so that I could compete at nationals. That's where you go and try to earn a pro card. Very hard to go pro in the NPC/IFBB. Less than 1% of competitors end up reaching pro status. It's very, very difficult.
And what
But first, I
allows you
need
to actually reach pro status?
Yeah, so you have to go to a national qualifier. You have to place top two at
Okay.
a national qualifier. That qualifies you for nationals. Then you go to a national show. There's about 6 of them per year
Okay.
around the country. And then at those, you either have to, it kind of depends on the show. You either have to place top two, or you have to win your class and then go to an overall and then go top 3 in the overall. And then you earn a pro card and
Wow.
become pro, and then go and compete in the IFBB Pro League, kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger status at that point.
Yeah.
It's very hard, but I wanted to just kind of see where I stood at that level. You never know until you know. So first steps first, I had to go to national qualifier, which was local to me, and felt great. I really did. I knew that I had a better chance of winning than not winning going into the show, just based on past shows, my size I'd gained, and how I was looking. So going in, I was expecting to do pretty good, but you never know. Bodybuilding's crazy, man. I mean, one freak shows up with God tier genetics and puts you to shame. And it happens all the time. You can have a winning physique. You can look insane and then get like 6th place.
Yeah, somebody like a Luke Hopkins comes through and you're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, you just never know in this sport. But
Yeah.
I was feeling confident. I knew I'd be up there. Yeah, so long story short, to kind of explain how these shows work, you show up to prejudging and you're compared against everyone in your class. At that point, 99% of the judging is done. I mean, they literally write you down on a piece of paper. This is the placing. They hand it to the backstage coordinator.
And this is before you even step on the official stage.
No, this is the official stage.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Prejudging. So you come out, you do your routine, then they compare you. And comparison round is like when you're battling. So they'll move you guys around, and they literally just compare you front, back, front, back, front, back for as long as it takes for them to come up with their conclusions. The 5 judges on the panel. And so, but that's when the judging's essentially done. And then for finals, they pretty much just place you. You walk out on stage, and then the backstage coordinator at that point already has the list of how everyone placed from prejudging, and they just place you. My class, and keep in mind, there's a lot of classes that compete at this show. I mean, there might be 40, 50 different classes amongst all the divisions. My class was the only class at the entire show that they decided to rejudge at finals. Don't know why, but at this point, I know I'm in 1st or 2nd place because of where they positioned me on the stage. And then I ended up, they rejudged us randomly, which we weren't expecting. And then I ended up placing 2nd, which did qualify me for nationals because top 2 gets qualified for nationals. And then I thought that was it. I walked off the stage, but then the backstage coordinator tried to pull me aside because the winner of each class, the person who placed 1st in each class, goes and competes for the overall. And so the lady, the backstage coordinator, she's like, hey, come over here, get ready for the overall. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, like, stay over here. We're getting all the winners over here, and then we're going to go out and do the overall. And I'm like, I didn't win though. And she like looked at her sheet. She's like, yeah, you did. Like, I have it printed off right here. And I was like, I didn't win. They rejudged us, and that guy won. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Like, they never do that. But, and so at that point, I had my buddy right next to me, and we're like, so does that mean I had one originally? Like, they chose me as the winner previously, and then they decided to rejudge, and then now that other guy won? And she's like, yeah.
Wow.
So pretty crazy. That doesn't really happen very often, but you just have to accept it. That's the sport right there. I mean, crazy stuff happens. It's extremely subjective. And that guy ended up winning the overall.
Wow.
I mean, go him. Congrats to him, right? But that could have been me, which would have been nice. But that is the sport right there. Bodybuilding 101. Crazy things happen.
So yeah, that's fucking wild. Do you think there was anything that you could have, like, you did wrong, or that changed? What do you think it was that changed? I mean, obviously you can't get into the mind of the judges, so it's hard to say that, but do you have any inclination of like why there was the flip-flop?
I have no idea. I looked better. I looked better coming into finals, and I asked the judge at the end, one of the judges, and he gave me like such a dumb answer. First of all, he like stumbled on his words, like he was like nervous or something. And he's like, well, yeah, let me check my notes real fast. And I like looked over, and he had like nothing written. He had no notes. And he's like, yeah, you needed leaner glutes. I was like, leaner glutes?
Oh my God.
And he's like, I mean abs. You needed to have sharper abs. And the issue with that is like objectively, I had sharper abs than the guy that ended up beating me. So I was like, okay, I think you're just kind of giving me a BS answer right now. But again, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I just have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
But you did place top 2 in your specific. Yeah. So did you get the opportunity to go to nationals, right?
Yeah, qualified for nationals. I decided to still go, despite it would have been nice to have won, but went to nationals, and then I totally expected this to happen, so it wasn't too much of a surprise. But those boys are big, the best in the country, and they rocked me. That's for sure.
Got it. Well, my favorite part about you, man, is that you're constantly reinventing, and not just dialed in on one side of things, as we all like to say. You're a hybrid, and now you're looking into, I've never heard the branding of mountain athlete, but we got a mountain athlete here. He's the mountain goat himself, and now he's doing some training. You're gearing up for a trek to Everest Base Camp, right? That's what this
Yes.
looks like. And so
Yeah.
it's been branded the stage to summit, which I fucking love. Bodybuilding to mountain athlete. What's the motivation behind that? How did you end up choosing Everest Base Camp? And then what is that journey looking like? Like, how far is that runs, hike, walk, whatever it is?
Yeah, let's get into it. So this has been on my mind for years, man. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Although I am known very much for bodybuilding, I have been into this type of stuff for forever. Outdoors, hiking, mountains, all the above. Don't get me started on snowboarding. I'll talk your ear off, and yeah, man, you want to have a good time, come shredding with me. But I've had to kind of hold that side back for the last several years to really give bodybuilding everything. The last thing I wanted to do was like only give 50%, and then you just never know what would have happened if I gave 100% to bodybuilding. So first of all, I'm still a bodybuilder. I'm still going to compete in bodybuilding down the road, but I have a long road ahead of me. I have to get bigger. That's going to take time, and I can say comfortably, I've given years of extreme focus, specifically staying away from all the other hybrid stuff I wanted to do the entire time, to dedicate to bodybuilding. But now, hey, I'm turning 30. I'm going to live my life a little bit and
Let's
do
go.
other things. And I'll make progress in the long run. The stage is always going to be there. It's not going anywhere. But for now, I'm going to do what I want to do. Now, when it comes to Everest Base Camp, I knew, because I'm turning 30 this year, I wanted it to be an epic year. I knew I wanted to step on stage on the national level, and then I wanted to do a big trek. I was actually looking at Everest Base Camp, which is it's about 2 weeks long.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't remember the mileage now. I think it's around 80 miles or so. And you're just navigating the Himalayas for 2 weeks up to 17,500 feet elevation to base camp, and then you come on back. I was between that and Kilimanjaro, actually. The Kilimanjaro is really cool because it's technically one of the 7 summits. If you've ever heard of the 7 Summit Challenge,
Is
which
that
is
7 highest summits in the world? Is that what that is?
every continent has its highest peak.
Okay.
And
Yep.
there's 7 continents.
Got it.
If you summit each one, you've done the 7 Summit Challenge, which from last time I heard, less than 400 people ever have completed it, because it's not easy and it's really expensive, and you got to travel the world. Very, very interested in that, by the way, but we'll see. Kilimanjaro is one of them. It's the tallest in Africa. It's 19,000 feet, and it's awesome. But I ultimately chose Everest Base Camp because I think it appeals to me a little bit more. There's a lot of culture to it. It's very spiritual. There's monasteries, there's temples, there's monks. It's very like Tibetan Buddhists. It's in Nepal. There's so many aspects to it. But at the end of the day, like, tallest mountain range in the world, hiking to the base camp of the tallest mountain in the world, it's hard to turn that down. I think it's going to be an incredible adventure for sure.
It absolutely will. I have a homie. It's funny that you brought up Kilimanjaro. I have a homie doing Kilimanjaro next month, which he's been training for. And then my other homie, Devin Levesque, he just climbed Everest himself. So it's been cool to see all the content from him climbing Everest, which is crazy. Do you have aspirations to actually climb the mountain one day? It sounds like you do with the 7 Summit Challenge.
Yeah, I feel super naive saying that right now, because at the end of the day, I've never done anything like that, right? But it's just hard knowing that there is the tallest mountain in the world that people are climbing, and all the people that are doing it are these crazy, insane people. And it's hard to just know that exists and not kind of, think about it,
100%.
So we'll see. I don't want to be naive and be like, oh, heck yeah, I'm going to do it. I've never done anything like that before. I think I got to prove myself a little bit, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. My wife is terrified of me taking the jump from running ultras to climbing mountains. Like that's her biggest
Yeah.
fear. She does not want me
Yeah.
to climb mountains. It's super intriguing to me. Like my favorite books to read are mountaineering books. My favorite
Yeah.
documentaries are the mountaineering documentaries.
Hmm.
I love it, but I have to keep it arm's length for now, at least. But I'm curious with this base camp hike that you have set your sights on. Is that like a big thing? Like, is this a well-known kind of traveling opportunity or like excursion, I should say? Or is this something you kind of came up with in your own unique way? I haven't heard of this before. That's why I ask.
Right. It's definitely gaining in popularity right now. You can
Okay.
tell. I have a buddy. His name's Jordan on Instagram and social media. His handle is Counting Countries. He's actually like a pretty big travel guy.
Okay.
And he's done it twice now. And I actually didn't know it was a thing either. I was still pretty stuck on probably Kilimanjaro, but then I found out Everest Base Camp existed. It's, similar altitudes, just different, a slightly different experience altogether. But uh, what I'm noticing about it is it's one of those treks where if you're fit and healthy, you can do it. It's kind of, to me, it's about how well can I do it though? Because
Mm-hmm.
some people, it's going to take them a very long time. They'll get really sick. A lot of people get altitude sickness. It's above the tree line. Trees can't exist that high. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
high up, 17,500 feet. And a lot of people end up doing like a helicopter back because it's just a lot to handle. So when I see this challenge, to me, it really is about thriving and not just surviving. I don't care so much about just doing something. And maybe that's the bodybuilder in me, because bodybuilding's a sport where anyone can sign up, pay for their ticket, and show up to a show and be a bodybuilder and talk about how they did a show once. But not everyone is on stage at 6 or 7% body fat, truly peeled to the bone, and actually looking the part and like a true bodybuilder. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I mean, it's like that and everything. You have people, I ran a marathon, but they walked half of it, versus someone who's running a 230, 240. There's a difference there. So with Everest Base Camp, although there are many people who can do it and survive and puke all on the way up and get a helicopter on the way down, I don't intend to be one of those people. I want to really push myself and thrive in that situation. Especially, part of the reason I find this so competitive with myself is because in the past I've struggled with elevation quite a bit.
Mm.
I did Mount Fuji in Japan last year, and around 10,500 feet is when I really start to feel it, and I get pretty dizzy and disoriented. And now I'm about to, go on 17,000 feet plus 18,000 feet. So I see it as kind of like a personal challenge to myself of like how fit can I get so that doesn't happen, or it's more manageable, at least. Like how well I want to get to base camp and feel like I belong there,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm a mountain athlete. That's why I call it a mountain athlete. It's like mountains, man. They're tough. They'll spit and chew anyone out. Like they will find your weaknesses, but you got to be tough. You can't just be a skinny runner. You definitely can't just be a big bodybuilder. You got to be a kind of a mixture. You got to be strong enough to will your way to the top and muscle your way to the top and carry your pack and handle the weight. But you got to be really fit too, to handle high elevations and all that cardio endurance. And at the same time, you got to be tough. Your knees, your ankles, your hips, everything's got to be strong and tough so you can handle, it's not a 1 day event, it's a 2 week event.
Right.
So there's a lot to it that is very intriguing to me, and I want to push myself to that limit and thrive in it.
So it's a week out, like 40 miles out for a week and then 40 miles back for a week. Is that kind of what that looks like?
Yeah, sounds about right. Yep.
Okay, cool, man. What has training been looking like for you? When is it, first of all? And then what is training looking
Mhm.
like for you leading up to that?
Yeah, so it's September 25th. I fly out to Nepal, and then I'll finish around October 5th. In the meantime, I've chosen a few like mini challenges because remember, like I've literally been bodybuilding straight for the last 3.5, 4+ years. I haven't been doing anything else. So I've been running a lot more. I figure trail running specifically is going to have a lot of carryover. It's going to toughen me up, get my joints right. and build the endurance I need. But I'm actually doing some races along the way to kind of like
Let's go.
prepare. So some mini challenges. Yeah, I'm super pumped for this, but I'm doing a 25K trail race in Yellowstone in 6 weeks.
Nice.
And then I haven't, I haven't, I haven't said this yet. I haven't signed up for it yet, but I'll throw this out there. I'll manifest it. I am considering doing a 50K trail race near Yellowstone, 2 weeks after that 15 or
Nice.
that 25K. So it'd be 31 miles. I've never run a half marathon in my life. I've never run a full marathon in my life. But man, sometimes you got to just let the dogs out, you know?
Signing up's the hardest part, bro. That's what I say for everybody going longer distances is like sign up. You're gonna figure it out along the way, but sign up, put that flag in the ground, and then kind of
I know, right?
reverse engineer
Yeah.
from there. So
Mhm.
I'm very I'm similar to you, and like I have something coming up. So I'm running Leadville in August, and
Oh,
I have
sick.
no
Okay.
fucking idea how I do at altitude because I haven't been at altitude before. Like I've been snowboarding in Breck a couple times, and that's the
That's pretty
extent
high,
of it. It's
right?
high. It's not too far from Leadville actually, but like
Yeah.
there's one thing sliding down a mountain on a board, and then there's another thing running up the mountain, going the other way. So we'll
Yeah. No ski
see.
lifts in Leadville.
No, no. So I'm excited about that, but I'm curious for altitude training. Is there anything besides just like I guess you could do a training run out at altitude? I don't. Are these the ones at Yellowstone? I'm sure are they at altitude as well? So you'll have some experience there too.
They're at altitude. They'll be around 6 to 6,500. So
Okay.
technically, it's at elevation, but it's not high elevation. To what I'm doing to train for that. So I'm doing a lot of running right now, like I said, but I'm actually going up to Idaho and the Tetons, and then also Canada, and I'll be up there pretty much all summer, just doing a bunch of hikes.
Nice.
My tallest hike there will probably be around 12, maybe 13,000. If I get lucky, I'll get closer to 13. And I will try to do some trail runs at decent elevations as well, around like Teton National Park and also Waterton National Park in Canada. Funny enough, I'm actually considering coming down to like Leadville/Colorado area in August. We'll see what happens, because actually, so Amanda Kimiko, who's a coach for Tua, she's doing Leadville as well. I know you're
Yep.
doing Leadville. A couple other people I know are doing Leadville, so
Yep.
I'm kind of considering just coming down and checking it out. I don't know if anyone needs crews or anything like that. I still don't know if Amanda needs any help or not. But hey, even if you need a crew or whatever, or even a pace, someone to pace you, I probably can't handle all that much, but it'd be good training for me. It'd give me an
Hell
excuse
yeah.
to get out to Colorado. So you just let me know. But we'll see what happens. I think doing something like Pikes or anything in that area in Colorado would be pretty beneficial to hit a 14er. And yeah, other than that though, dude, you just got to show up and hope you acclimatize.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
show up to
Facts.
Nepal and let it happen.
Yeah, I am going to Leadville next month for a training session for 4 or 5 days, so I'm excited about that. Linking up with a couple
Cool.
buddies. Yeah, Amanda's running it. I'm trying to get Amanda on the pod. She's such a beast, man. She's just an awesome
She is.
human being,
Yeah.
like so resilient. She has an incredible story.
Mhm.
How did you guys get linked up, and how did that look like when she actually joined Tua?
Yeah, like-minded people, man. I
Yeah.
always looked up to her. I thought she was dope. I was always sending her stuff to my wife and being like, man, like check this out. This is really cool. And yeah, she's just a huge source of inspiration for sure. I had her speak at one of our events called Camp Tua,
Yep.
and I wanted her there because hey, she's an uncommon individual. We wanted uncommon people to learn from and to gain inspiration from. So she came and we just really hit it off. Her and her husband Tyler, they're awesome people. I mean, right off the bat, we actually met when she did her 50 miler in Antelope Canyon. I was up there with Matt Johnson and Nathan French and a few other people that we had running up there. And so that's when we met. We just hit it off right away. It seemed like we were just best friends from the get-go. And then that kind of led into getting her to, become a coach, become a Tua coach, and handle our endurance and hybrid side of things within Tua. So that's what she's doing now. She's crushing it. She's awesome. I can't wait to see her succeed. Do Leadville. She's doing it for charity, which I think is amazing. And yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah. I
That's it.
love the
She's
roster.
awesome.
You're putting together such an epic roster at Tua, man. It's pretty badass to watch.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to circle back to is, so you
Mhm.
have done a variety of difficult things in your life. You keep trying to like push the envelope, level up. What's the hardest thing that you've ever physically accomplished? Anything come to mind specifically when I ask that? Because I know some people, just the pure mental aspect of bodybuilding is just
Yeah.
so incredibly difficult. It doesn't really matter who you
Mhm.
are. Some people are better suited for it than others, but that can be incredibly difficult. But also, running can be incredibly difficult, and ultra running and doing some of these things. So I'm curious for you, what came to mind when I asked you that?
I would have to say bodybuilding, and I think that's why I stuck to it so long too. I also think that's partially why I'm trying to do other things, because I found this last prep. I don't want to say I got bored with it. It was still really hard. Don't get me wrong. It was very hard, but it was a hard that I have already done several times now. So it kind of lost its shine to me a little bit. I mean, I still love the sport. I'm still going to do the sport, all that stuff. But like specifically talking about like the challenge aspect and like that feeling you get when you're really pushing yourself. I've done it several times now, so I'm ready for something else. But I would have to say bodybuilding, man. Specifically my 2021 prep.
Mm.
It was real rough. My coach is one of the most winning natural bodybuilding coaches in the world. Actually, he's very successful as a coach, and he told me that he has never had to push a male athlete as hard as he had to push me. For whatever reason, my
Wow.
body just wasn't having it, and so I went, several weeks at 1,300 calories,
Wow.
40 grams of carbs, 75-minute cardio sessions. Just nothing, just starving myself and getting by. It's something no one will ever understand that feeling unless they go through it. But you do not have energy at all, and it's not like lack of will. It's not lack of like motivation. It is beyond that. You are literally nothing. You have nothing to give physically anymore. Brain doesn't work. You can't think straight. You can't do anything. Life becomes very unenjoyable. You can't read a book and enjoy it the same way. You can't watch TV and enjoy it the same way. It's almost like I'm stripped from the energy to enjoy things. I would try to watch a movie to kill some time, and I just couldn't. I had to turn it off after 20 minutes because it's just like
Wow.
it just I can't explain it. I really can't explain it. But everyone's prep's going to be different. There's going to be people out there who have really not that hard of a time, prepping, getting shredded. For me, for whatever reason, it has been a little extra hard, having to be pushed, way harder than a lot of athletes do have to be pushed to get the right look. But I'm grateful for that because, when you finish something like that, man, and I'm sure you can relate to this in other aspects. When you finish something like that, you feel so limitless. You like unlock something within yourself. I remember specific moments during that prep where I faced myself. Like I faced my limits is the best way to put it. You dig so hard where you literally find your limit and you meet
Mm.
it. And I've had these, I would argue maybe like spiritual moments where you are facing your limit, looking yourself in the eyes, and in that moment you choose, do I back down and do I quit, or do I embrace this and not fear it anymore and just let it happen? And it's a beautiful thing. I'll tell you a story. This is what Tua is, by the way. Tua is not a bodybuilding company. We're not a running company. We're not a company. We are the the middle of all of that, where doing hard things does something to you mentally, and it changes you, and it helps you discover your inner greatness. That's where Tua is. That's what it's all about. And you have to do uncommon things and be uncommon, take uncommon action to find that. But that's what Tua is. But I noticed this. I'm going to tell a story about Nathan French real fast. I was there for when he ran his 100 mile ultra,
Yep.
and which is crazy. The longest he'd ever run before that was a marathon, and he went from 26.2 to 100. Quite the jump. There's this
Uncommon.
moment, straight up. There's this moment where he was like definitely at his breaking point, and he became very, very sad and depressed. And it was probably somewhere in the ballpark of like 50 to 70-ish miles,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in that ballpark. He became very dark and depressed, and he was in a bad place. But not a not an ounce of him was going to quit though. I mean, you could see it. He was just going to keep going, but he was very depressed. And I actually knew exactly what he was experiencing in that moment, because during my preps in the past, especially the 2021 prep, I became really depressed for, I don't know, maybe 10 days. There's like a 10-day gap, something like that, where I became very, very dark and depressed. And it sounds sad, but I actually don't mean it to come across that way at all. What happened, and I knew this is what was happening to Nathan in that moment, is he met his limits and had made the decision that he was not going to quit. And because of that, there's no way out. And when you realize there is no way out, but just to keep going, you become really almost like sad and depressed. Because, but it's a good sign, because had he been, happier, or me and my preps, had I stayed a little too happy, too upbeat, it's almost like, because at any time you can quit and just, it can end. You can end the suffering.
Right.
I could go and eat a meal and feel fine an hour later. There's a way out. But to me, that wasn't an option anymore. There was no escape. I was stuck. And for that reason, I experienced this like severe depression, and I saw it in him in that moment. I was like, oh man, he's not going to quit. This is good. It's sad, but it's good. It's a beautiful thing, but only extreme people who put themselves in extreme situations will ever get the experience of going through that and understanding what that's like. So,
I've had the pleasure, I will say, of going through that myself, man. And
mhm,
I think it, regardless of what the medium is, it could be bodybuilding, it could be ultra running,
mhm,
but these things that take you to these limits, man, it's wild. Like, I think a huge part of it comes from, you mentioned deciding you're not going to quit. For me, it comes from deciding that before I even start the race, right? It's like before I even step foot on the starting line, I'm committed to say, unless I am literally getting pulled out on a stretcher, like there's no fucking way I'm not finishing this race. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people do DNF and like, drop out of some of these competitions and stuff, is because they're leaving leeway to negotiate with themselves and
yes,
be able to convince themselves of like, it's okay. It's okay not to finish. It's okay to have this meal when I'm not supposed to. It's okay. But when you don't leave that room for negotiation and compromise with yourself, is when you ultimately meet that, come to Jesus moment of like depression, but like epiphany and this like magic moment where shit changes, dude. Like you literally
mm,
in real time are leveling up. I'm getting chills just kind of thinking about it because it's happened to me before, but like those are the times in life, and you can literally probably go back to them and count them on your hand of those times when you're like, holy shit, I remember that day or that week. And that's when I truly like became the person that I am today because of that experience.
amen to that. Yeah, it's dude, it's a real thing for sure. You see it even on a lifestyle. So I coach a lot of lifestyle guys, and I'd have to say the reason why people can't stick to their diet is because again, it's an option. They wake up in the morning and they have to decide whether they're gonna, hit their macros that day or not. And it's like at that point you've lost, man. You've lost. You had to make that decision before, that there was no other option. And something I'm really proud to say is I have never in my entire life, through all these preps, months and months and months, I've been on, prep in my life for some around, it has to be like combined 2+ years, maybe even 2.5 years of my life. I've been like in bodybuilding prep, and not a single time, not a single day or moment have I, gone over my macros and cheated on my diet. Not a single time. And something we tell our athletes in TUA is that perfection is the standard, and that you can have a perfect prep. Like you can every single day hit your macros and do your cardio and go work out and all these things. You can literally go an entire prep and be perfect. And as soon as you realize that, like I just don't think a lot of people realize that. It's like how in control that is for us. You know, we can finish things. We can be perfect in things if we actually decide to, and not let anything else be an option.
Yeah, and I can firsthand experience of seeing you kind of live this out in real life is I saw a quote that you posted that was like post show. Right. And that's that feeling after of like, holy shit, I got through it. Like now I can relax or whatever. But you're like, amateurs binge after a show, pros don't. And you still stuck to, whatever your macros were or whatever it was after show. What does that look like for you? Are you ever letting yourself kind of let off the gas a little bit? Like obviously there's leniency and you're not going to be as strict, but like are you still hitting your macros, the day, 2 days, 3 days right after a show as well?
Yeah, so I got immediately on my post-show plan. Very hard to do. I would
Mm-hmm.
I would argue post-show is harder than the prep itself because although the prep is like more extreme and intense, you have to because you're stepping on stage, and if you cheat, everyone will know. After show, hey, no one's gonna know. Not a single soul would know if I just got a 4-box cookie thing at Crumble or whatever and ate it. No one would know. I'm not competing in anything. It would just be between me and myself and I. Um, so it's harder. It really is. And so yeah, I've been sticking to the plan. The goal though is never to just be strict just to be strict. I think
Right.
I'm a realist as well, although I consider myself like an extreme person. Um, yeah, you don't just be strict just to be strict. There's like times to push and pull, times to floor it, times to let off the gas a little bit, for your own betterment. Like if you just, even in anything in business, if you work 20 hours a day, eventually you're not going to be active and you'll burn out. I mean, that's just human nature. So slowly but surely, yeah, I'm going into week 5 now. So I am trying to be a little bit more lenient. My calories are actually just quite higher as well. So I've been putting on some healthy body weight. I'm up somewhere in the ballpark of 6 or 7 pounds now from stage, which is quite good. So I feel really healthy now. I definitely have like some crazy hunger in my satiety, and my hunger cues are all jacked up still, but it'll get better with time. So that's kind of where I'm at now. But initially, yeah, that first month or so is just like follow the plan, man. Follow it. It's gonna be worth it, and it has been.
Yeah.
I didn't gain show 20, 30 pounds like some people legitimately do in the first week.
I
It's
was
crazy.
about to ask that, dude. You said 6, 7 pounds. I'm like, don't people probably gain that like a day after the show
Yeah.
usually?
Yes, or more. I mean, I've
Yeah.
I've had athletes who are like, I'm not following this plan, and have literally, I'm not kidding, gained 20 plus pounds in 3 days.
Wow. And
Yeah,
so
it's just over at
the
that point.
strategy that you're implementing, I believe it's called the reverse diet. Is that right?
Mhm.
And
Reverse diet / recovery diet. Yeah.
what exactly does that mean, reverse diet?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to put it is it's you're bringing those calories back up. You were just in a
Okay.
very depleted phase I was on prep for, I don't know, 6+ months. So now we're going to raise those calories slowly, let my metabolism recover and adapt, hormones, all that good stuff. And eventually you can get back to the calories you were hopefully at, prior to the prep. But you have to go about that in a slow and controlled way. You can't just jump things up real fast. Your body's I mean, I'm still really sensitive right now. Anytime I eat like a dessert or something right now, I mean, I just turn into a puffball, like instantly, just watery and like, yeah, it sucks. I feel it in my fingers and like my ankles. And my body's not normal. It's been 4 or 5 weeks, and my body's still not quite normal yet. But so you got to be slow and controlled about that. Otherwise, I mean, I know guys have been hospitalized with extreme edema after a show because they ate too much too quickly, too much sodium, too many carbs, and by day 3, their blood pressure's through the roof, and like their limbs are going numb, and like they literally have to go to the hospital to like go through this process of just drainage, and
Mm.
so they don't like have a heart attack. All this crazy stuff, man. It's bodybuilding's crazy. It's like love it, hate it, but extreme sports, there's extreme things that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever practice intuitive eating, like in your off
Mhm.
season, or is it always count, count, count every single day?
So this past off season, I committed myself to being as strict as possible. Because again, I was going all in with it, and I didn't want there to be any stone unturned. So I was pretty on top of it with tracking. That being said, I did travel a lot as well. My wife and I, we went international several times for a month plus time, frame at a time. We were in Japan for a month. We did Spain for a month. We did UK and other parts of Europe for a month. We did Hong Kong and everywhere, South Korea. So through those periods, like I'm not bringing my food scale to like a ramen shop in Japan. Like that's not happening.
Right.
And at that point, I'm just intuitive eating. But I've done this for a pretty long time. So I'm really proud of how I did, because I used to be the type that would go on vacation and just gain weight. That's what you do. I went on like 3 or 4 cruises this off season, and didn't gain any weight at all on them, just by like being somewhat disciplined and still enjoying myself. I'm not like a freak, I promise, but like knowing when to stop and what your limits should be, and keeping the bigger goal as a priority. Yeah.
I just took a vacation, and it was the first time I came off vacation and like had lost a little bit of weight. Like I stopped drinking last year, which obviously is a huge contributor, but it felt so good, man. Like, and it's not like you're making these huge sacrifices. It's just being
Mhm.
smart. It's just eating like you would at home, just being prepared, right? It's more about being prepared and making sure like you're putting yourself in the right positions to succeed than anything. But man, coming off that and not feeling bad like we so often do after coming off vacation or whatever, where we drink too much or we eat out at the restaurants too much or whatever it is, and finding that happy medium of being like I was still dialed in, but I still enjoyed myself and my family. It's really hard to do, but man, it's so incredibly rewarding afterwards as well.
Yeah, there's certainly a mental aspect to it, and just working with a bunch of athletes and bodybuilders, you start to realize how important it is to have a good relationship with food specifically, and it can be tricky. But I guess I want to say this just to give hope to people. But I mean, I've been in situations where for years I didn't have the best relationship with food, where I had to really try very hard to say no to certain treats or desserts, or to not overeating all the time. It took a lot of discipline for me to do that. During my off season, dude, I don't know, I just totally fixed that issue, and it was really cool to see, because, for instance, like, oh, well, I don't know, like a couple weeks ago or something, I had a calorie only feed day. And so I saved up my calories all day so we could go to Cheesecake Factory, which is, my wife and I, like, we're obsessed with that place. One slice of cheesecake is in the ballpark of 12, 13, 1400 calories. And so typically, like, in the off season, what my wife and I would do is we would just split it. So it'd be, let's say, 600, 700 calories for me, just for that half of cheesecake. And in the off season, when I had a really good relationship with food, and I, first of all, didn't think about food very often, sometimes would forget food existed, and I have to like remind myself to eat. Also, it's just like the least interesting thing about my day. We would go to Cheesecake Factory, we'd get the cheesecake, and then we like just wouldn't even finish it. Like,
Mhm.
I'd eat a fourth, maybe she'd eat a fourth, and then we just kind of like forget it exists and just be done and move on with our lives. But a couple weeks ago, now that I'm post show and very food focused and starving, really, like, I ate my half, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, give me 4 more of those, you know. But I'm the same person. It's just mentally, though, different situation. So I'm going through that process now of kind of like healing my relationship with food, which I'm very confident I'll get back to where I was. But there's a lot of people out there that are similar to that, where dessert comes around, and it's called like food noise, where it's almost like they get food anxiety and they can't stop thinking about the food that's around them and things like that. But as soon as you fix that, which is difficult but possible, food becomes the least important and interesting thing about your day and about your life, and suddenly you're able to live a much healthier lifestyle, because you're not so focused on that stuff.
What are some of the the things that you recommend to athletes who are really struggling with the cravings and with like not feeling full? Are there things that you say, "Hey, this like egg whites or something just comes to mind. Egg whites is one of those like very low calorie things." But are there things that you say if you have to have something like do something like this, or is there different techniques you can use to kind of trick your mind, quote unquote, or how do you kind of coach athletes through that are having some difficulties there?
Yeah, there's those like beginner steps, I'd say, the very applicable ones, where you say, yes, like, hey, instead of eating 5 whole eggs every morning, like, just have egg whites. Instead of having like the full calorie barbecue sauce, get like the low sugar barbecue sauce that tastes the exact same, but is, way less calories. There's those little tricks for sure. Ultimately, though, it's going to be a mental thing. And I think what happens a lot with athletes is they try to overly restrict too often, and then end up having like those really high calorie days,
Hmm.
because the restriction, it's like they're a rubber band, like they're just being pulled back, pulled back, pulled back, and then they snap, and then they start pulling back, and it's just like this constant pull, 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 and then snap, snap, snap. And they either end up looking skinny fat, which is typically what happens. Or yeah, they just kind of get overweight, even though they feel like they're restricting, and they are restricting, but they're still eating too many calories. So the secret, and this is easier said than done, but it's really balance. You got to stop having those really high calorie days and then those really low calorie days. The really low calorie days are going to make you feel cool, like you're on plan, but it's also going to make you really hungry and lose your willpower as soon as you're around desserts on the weekend. If you can balance those out and just be even on a more consistent basis, not only are you going to see better results as an athlete, and your physique's probably going to get a whole lot better too, but you'll be well fed and not as restricted. And so mentally, that does a lot to people, So then you get around dessert and get to the point where it's like, oh, cool, I could have a little dessert right now, but you're not too worried about it. You're not overly focused on it, and you don't overindulge. Basically, yeah. You have no need to. You have no desire to.
Yeah. I want to be conscious of your time, man. Do you have like 5 more minutes? I could keep going with you.
Good. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll keep it 5 to 10 more minutes. I just have so many questions I want to run by you because I'm, lately I feel like the nutrition piece for me is the piece that I neglected for the longest. Like I always would, I don't have a problem getting the miles in. I don't have a problem getting the 2-a-days, the strength workouts in. I feel like nutrition for endurance athletes is kind of that last piece of like, I don't have to be perfect here and I can still get away with it. But if you are perfect, as you say, you can go through a perfect prep, but quote unquote perfect. If you're really, really good and you're dialed in, it's going to take you up to the next level. I'm curious, I am coming from, obviously, most people who are endurance athletes are like high carb, high carb, high carb. That's what you see. It's what you hear preached a lot. I have never felt really, really good on that. And actually the last couple of weeks I've transitioned to a low carb, higher fat diet, which, for the last 3 weeks, it's worked really well for me. I'm curious on your side of things when you're coaching athletes, endurance athletes, specifically like these hybrid or these runners that are running 40, 50, 60 plus mile weeks. What do you typically recommend on the diet and nutrition side of fueling, and to make sure, hey, you got to fuel correctly. You got to make sure you're taking in enough energy, but also we're not here to, as Nick Bear says, I think you can't, or the furnace is, he says something about the furnace burning too hot or something like that, where it's like you're putting all this thing in, you're not going to outwork a shitty diet, right? So what do you kind of recommend to hybrid athletes and runners who are working through the nutrition aspect?
Yeah, a few things come to mind. I think endurance athletes are usually pretty good at fueling for their endurance training. I would say they're pretty good at training for the runs, and so they consider, I ate a bunch of carbs before my run, and I had carbs during my run, so I have a high carb diet. And that part might be true, but then they pay little attention to the rest of the day, or what else they're doing with their diet. So a lot of times they can be under consuming protein, and a lot of times they probably are actually consuming way higher fats than they realize. They just don't consider themselves having a high fat diet because they think they're high carb because of their pre-training and intra-training carbs. So what I would see happen in this situation is, actually, this is just an American issue. This isn't even an endurance runner issue. This is an American issue. The fats that are kind of like hidden. If you were to ask most Americans, they would say that like sugar is the big problem. Like Americans consume too much sugar or carbs in general. Americans do not consume that much carbs or sugar. If you compare us to many other countries, literally any Asian country at all, where they are way more fit and healthy and live longer than us, they consume significantly more carbs than us. Americans overconsume fat like crazy. As soon as this happens 90% of the time, if I give anyone new macros, they're going to blast through the fats like instantly. And then they're going to message me and say, I don't know how to, I just hit my fats by breakfast. I was, and hit all my fats for the day. I was like, yep, I was waiting for that message. This is what we're going to do. And it's because everything's like hidden in there. We think like, oh, donuts, sugar, carbs. Okay, well, donuts have more fat than they do sugar and carbs, or we think you could do that with anything. Oh, cookies, sugar, carbs, right? Nope, it has more fats than it does carbs. So it's all those fats that we don't think we're eating that we actually are. The thing with fats, and there are going to be some situations like with you where the athlete might feel better with a higher fat diet, and cool. If you're controlling your calories well, you're still going to look great, feel great, all that good stuff. The issue though is when we're in a caloric surplus, usually from consuming too much fats that we don't realize we're consuming. Fat is stored as fat. Carbs are not stored as fat typically. It's actually very hard for the human body to store a carbohydrate as a fat. Even in a hypercaloric diet that is mostly like high carb, it's less than, I think, 3% from what I've seen from studies. Less than 3% of those carbs are actually end up stored as body fat. It's because it's very hard for the body to do that. Fat, though, is stored as fat in a surplus. So fat, first of all, is essential. We need it. Definitely don't demonize it and have healthy fats in your diet for sure, because you have to. But as soon as we're blowing our calories out of the water with really high fat, it's like you're asking your body at that point to store more body fat.
Right.
Rather than trying to tip the scale and say, okay, I'm going to be low, moderate fat, high carb, high protein, and I'm going to train really hard in the gym with weights. Now you're tipping the scale. So it's called like nutrition partitioning. It's like when you're in a caloric surplus, what's going to happen to those calories? Are we going to store it as fat, or are we going to maybe build some muscle with it? And the high fat diet is asking your body to store more body fat. The high carb, high protein diet is going to tip that scale a little bit more for muscle building. So that's kind of the issue I'm seeing. I don't know. Hopefully that all made sense.
Yeah, no. That's super insightful, man, because you see so much online and you're not sure, you do your research and everything, but it's just hard. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I've been, traditionally training, and it's so true, man. I like that you brought up the point about, as endurance athletes, as runners, we really think about the main meals before the run and after the run is like the core ones, but you get a little bit lax on the rest of the stuff. And so I think that's where we can dial in a little bit. Last thing I kind of wanted to ask about it, I know that travel's huge for you. Like, you and your wife, I know you went to Japan earlier this year or last year, and you take like these month-long trips, which is fucking phenomenal. I'm a huge fan of traveling myself. Do you have anything else coming up as far as trips? Obviously, you have some competition, so you're going to fucking Nepal soon for that. But more like lifestyle and just you and the wifey getting away for a little bit coming up.
Yeah. So travel, it's huge, man. It is so huge. I'm very passionate about just humanity in general and different cultures and stuff. And that's partially why I really like this whole new direction I'm going right now with the treks and things like that, because it can take me in all sorts of really cool places. After we do Everest Base Camp, we probably will do Kilimanjaro, and we'll see what else is out there too. But yeah, just as a lifestyle thing. So obviously, we're going to Nepal, right? I've been looking at flights from Nepal to other places I want to go. We love Japan. I got to say, shout out Japan. Use my code Oak to say, no, I'm just kidding. But Japan's awesome. Got to shout them out. And we went twice last year, and we miss it. We want to go back. We've never been to a place quite like that where, I've been to Paris a couple times, and I lived in the UK for a couple years, and I've been back 2 or 3 times. I don't really get excited about the idea of like going back again necessarily. I mean, hey, you buy me flights to Paris, I'll have a great time. But like, I don't sit at home thinking about, oh man, I wish I was in Paris right now.
Yeah.
We do that for Japan though. We straight up do.
Really?
So what I'll say is this fall, I'm definitely looking at maybe Japan again, maybe South Korea again. I want to go to Taiwan. I want to go to Singapore, just more Asia really. And do some more stuff like that. But hey, we'll see, man. We'll see what happens. We want to get to China too. Gotta get to China.
You should go to Vietnam, dude. You ever been?
No, hear good things though.
Yeah,
everyone's obsessed with Vietnam too.
Yes. So, the best thing I ever did, I've talked about this on the pod quite a bit, but it's worth emphasizing, is buy a one-way ticket and just travel solo for like 9-10 months. I picked Vietnam first because it was the cheapest country I could possibly find. I was like, I can live on $3 a day there. Cool, let's go. So I bought,
Yeah.
I didn't have much money saved. I had $1,500 maybe saved, and I bought a one-way to Vietnam. And I was like, I'll figure it out once I get over there, because I was building my video production business at the time. So I was building my portfolio. Cool. So when travel vlogging was like a big thing, so I was doing that.
Yeah. Oh,
but Vietnam, man, was phenomenal. I'd highly recommend that. And also, have you been to Bali before?
No, it's been on the list. We wanted to actually live there for a little bit, and then COVID ruined all of that. So it's been on the list though.
Nice.
Yeah.
And, well, what is it about Japan that like sets you guys on fire? I'm curious. I've heard that before, and I need to get it higher on my list because I just consistently hear such good things about it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just a really well developed country, very clean, very safe. It has everything you need. It's all very just nice, and it's just perfect. But the culture, really, I mean, it's just so different. Asia in general, and I know you know this if you've been to Vietnam, but it is so different than like Western culture, and it's nice. It's refreshing to go somewhere where people are just doing something different. It gives you a big insight on like just how big this world is and how many people are here, and I'm always on this big search for just more wisdom, more knowledge. And so getting out of your bubble is like so crucial, because you got to rub shoulders with different people and just live in an environment where people think differently than you. It allows you to grow mentally more that way. So Japan's really cool because it's like you get that complete opposite, that contrast from Western society, but it's done in such a way where, I mean, Japan is just so nice. It's just everything about it is so nice. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's not like some third world country, where you're like, hey, it's really nice, but you gotta, poop in a hole or anything like that. Hey, Japan, you're gonna have a luxury toilet everywhere you go.
Yeah, it'll probably talk
seats,
to you and like
it'll play music. Yeah, you'll walk up to it, it'll open up and sanitize itself with lights.
Yeah,
and then
wild.
And have a heated seat, and you're just like, what the? Yeah.
You go to Bali, you'll find some of those. Dude, the craziest thing to me was like they wouldn't have toilet paper. Instead, they would have like just a spray gun, basically like one of those things that used to be next to every sink back in the day. Is like how you wash your ass. I'm like, oh, that's new, interesting.
Yeah, I've actually had that in Spain too, but they give you the option though. They have the Western toilet, and then they have like the separate bidet, like low to the ground sink thing with the hose. And
yeah,
I typically would just opt for the Western toilet in that situation, but
default back to Old Faithful for sure.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
But that's the best thing about travel, as you said, is like the cultural experiences you get from the people, and like you grow so much, man. As a person, you come back and you just appreciate things so much more. So that's awesome. Definitely putting Japan higher on my list. Brady, I think that's a good place to wrap, man. I want to be conscious of your time. We've gone over a little bit here. So I appreciate you so much for coming on. I really wanted to have this conversation for quite some time. So I'm finally stoked that we made it happen. If anybody, for any reason, isn't following you at this point, where can they keep up with you?
Yeah, Brady Oak Fitness on Instagram, YouTube. I'm pushing the YouTube hard right now, so come set us up on YouTube and like all my videos and comment all of them for the algorithm. But yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram, so yeah, just Brady Oak Fitness. That's pretty much that. I've also, dude, I've always since we started following each other, I always thought you were super cool, dude. Always knew that you were different and definitely like someone that I wanted to chat with, and I think we probably have a good time. So maybe we'll catch up in Leadville or something. Maybe we'll go to Japan, or maybe we'll do Kilimanjaro together. Who knows?
I like it. I'd be down for all three of those. Let's go.
It's funny actually. So I wanted to get a really cool group together for Kilimanjaro or Everest Base Camp. It's kind of too late now for this fall, but I wanted to get a cool group together. That was my vision. And I started asking around, and I got a whole bunch of people that were like, wow, that sounds awesome. Count me in. And then as soon as it kind of came down to the wire of like, hey, when do you want to go? They'd be like, I'm out. So I'm on the look for cool friends who actually can commit. So hey,
let's go.
We'll talk more.
Hell yeah, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Talk later.
All right, y'all. That's the pod. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please do us a favor and subscribe, like, comment, share, all of the above. We're trying to reach more people who are interested in that casually ambitious lifestyle, and you're going to help us do it. Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next one.